1. You are live, you are live.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Greater Kruger National Park, the western fringes thereof. We're here at Juma Private Game Reserve, Arathusa to the west of us, 1,500 hectares of magnificent African paradise from which I have been absent for the past 18 days or so. My name is James. In case this is the first time you're seeing me, I'm sorry about my presence here today, but you know, one must make a living. On camera today we have 6'4" of Bryan. He seems to have grown taller since I was away. There he is. That is his thumb. He is much larger than just his thumb. In the final control we have got Nyala on the vocals and tapping the keys. We've got Kirsten McLennan-Smith. Alex is knocking about with the technical stuff, and Eugene, I think, is doing the same. Someone's cooking us dinner. Hopefully she hasn't arrived yet, and that is the status of things here at Juma and WildEarth. We are obviously looking at a magnificent herd of little elephants here. Sorry, a little herd of magnificent elephants, to be more accurate. And this one, Bryan and I actually have quite a strong relationship with. You can see that female there, the cow, who's just picking out some silver cluster leaf leaves to eat, is the one that has had her trunk chopped off, possibly in an injury as a calf, and she's just given birth to that tiny special little thing behind her. And Bryan and I have spent a lot of time with this little herd until the birth of this tiny little thing there. This herd consisted only of a sort of a chopped off trunk cow and the two youngsters behind her, and I suspect quite strongly that they are both her offspring. So she's the matriarch of this little herd, and they spend quite a lot of time around here, and the main thing that they eat is something called Combretum calinum, and they've just absolutely macerated one of them just over there, which Bryan is showing you now. You can see the second oldest one is just leaving that tree in a state of great disrepair, of course, and now they're having some silver cluster leaf. So it's been a fascinating time away, mainly because it's been so interesting to get back here and see all of this sort of greenery, which apparently has only been here for the last few days since you had a little bit of rain, or we had a little bit of rain. And thank you very much to all of you for your very kind welcomes back to me. And it is very nice to be back in the Lowveld, I must say. And Lucy, you want to know what I was doing? Well, Lucy, I can't tell you everything that I was doing while I was on leave, of course. This is a family show. I am joking, of course. I was down with my parents in the Eastern Cape. I did a lot of swimming in the sea, swimming in the river. I drank a few sundowners, a few midday drinks too, because that is what one does on a seaside holiday in the magnificent Eastern Cape of South Africa. And if the Lowveld isn't my favorite, the Eastern Cape certainly would be a very close second. So that's what I was doing. Thank you, Lucy, for taking the interest. Look at that little thing there. It's so special to come back and see that, I must say. And I'd be very interested to know, while I was gone, of course, we were almost 3 weeks, or just over 2 weeks, what highlights you might have had while I was gone. I certainly tried to keep up with bits and pieces on the Twitter sphere. I didn't watch any of the shows due to the incredibly pathetic internet that we have here in this country. One day it will get better, but I did try and keep up with things. So if you had a particular highlight from the last 18 days or so, let me know what it was. I was quite jealous of some of the stuff. The new leopard, of course, just the other day. Then those little hyena cubs popped out of the den basically as I drove out of the gate, which I thought was very unkind of them, given that I'd spent so much time watching them and made the cameraman film an empty hole for many hours on end. Try and just get into a slightly better position to look at these elephants. They are pretty relaxed around us normally, so that's pretty good. Let's see if we can't get a little bit closer. On the other vehicle, of course, is Scott, and he is being filmed by Andrew. And please just remember, of course, my introduction, of course, will need a little bit of work as I get back into things. We are live. which means that we do want you to talk to us. Hashtag SafariLIVE if you're on Twitter, or questions at wildearth.tv if you happen to be on the email. So please talk to us as often as you like and ask us about the magnificence of this incredible wildlife area that we're seeing, still in the grips of something of a fairly severe drought at the moment. And I think what you'd find is an elephant herd like this in a normal year, and by normal I use the term advisedly, of course, because normal rainfall in this part of the world is not necessary. It's always pretty variable. But I think you'd find that these elephants would be carrying quite a lot more weight in a year of better rain. Certainly at the moment they seem to be pretty skinny. So one hopes that the new mother is going to be producing sufficient milk for that little one to drink. It's a gentle breeze blowing. It's about 33 degrees, 90, I think that's 95 degrees Fahrenheit, so pretty hot, but very pleasant. Look, just starting to go and have a drink now. And how lovely to hear that Michelle Moore, whose brother Eric is a regular chatter to us. He's in Florida. And Michelle, you say this is your first time to watch us, and you're watching with your 11-year-old daughter. That's wonderful. Thank you very much for giving us of your time. And you're in Virginia Beach as well. And it's great to have you along, and I'm especially pleased that you have a young wilderness enthusiast with you who will one day, hopefully, turn into a leader who will be able to help conserve our much maligned and much threatened protected areas throughout the world. Welcome to both of you, and please ask us questions. I'm just going to nip slightly forward and hope that we can't get a slightly better view of that little one in the shade there. I think what we're going to do is spend as long as I can with these elephants. It's so special to see just a tiny thing. You can see they're trying to suckle, and I think Scott will probably head off to the lions that we saw this morning. So while we're sitting here, let's just watch her suckle for a little bit, and then we'll hand you over to Scott, and he can keep you posted on what he's going to try and do. Look at that. Oh, that's just so sweet. 100 kilograms is that little thing when it comes out of its mother. That's 220 pounds. That is a lot of animal to be carrying around in one's belly. Right, so let's head straight across to Scott Dyson. Wonderful to see him again, of course. He's got the tones in my ears, and Scott with some warthogs. I will see you shortly.
Oh, that feels good. Yeah. How awesome is this? Sadly, you just missed the two little piglets. They were going for it before Mom arrived, and I'm hoping they may pop up into another little gap. Let me just reverse quickly. Hello, everyone. Welcome on board. Where have they gone? They may just sneak through a little gap there. I think Andrew should be able to get them. There we go. So look at the heavily pregnant mother. She's the one that's in front. The other one actually wasn't the mother, the one we saw rubbing up against that tree. That would be a youngster from this female from the 2014 litter, born late November 2014 in all likelihood. Whereas the smaller little piglets that we'll see shortly, I'm sure they're going to pop into frame, will be the more recent ones. There they are. There's a smaller one on the far left there. So 2 remaining piglets from the most recent litter and 1 from the last. So quite a successful mother. And it appears like the grey herbivores are the most prominent for the starts of this very warm sunset safari. Hello, my name's Scott, if any of you are joining for the first time. It's so wonderful to have James back in camp, and I'm sure a lot of you are happy to see him behind the wheel again. And what a great start he's got off to with Short Trunk and the new addition to her little family. I'm just going to do a quick loop around this area where there is a chance we could find some sign of shadow, a female leopard. And Jamie had some tracks of, in all likelihood, this female leopard in this general area this morning. So we're just going to do a quick loop around because it's still very, very warm. And thereafter, we're going to head across to Arathusa, where the Birmingham ladies, proud of 5 Lioness, are busy snacking on a buffalo that they caught last night.
About 200 meters south of power lines after that little drainage. There's a conversion branch in there.
And Brent's just giving us the exact directions to that.
Okay, copy that.
So I copied that, which is the good news. And in all likelihood, they are going to be very full-bellied and full of buffalo and very hot and uncomfortable. So that's why there's no major rush to go there. But we will probably be there in about 15 or 20 minutes just to give you a quick look at the 4 lioness that are within the pride at the moment. The one female, we do not know where she has gone. Speculation, maybe she's headed off to give birth, or possibly to do some mating, or possibly just for a change of scenery. So there's no set reason why a lioness would split from her pride. It does happen from time to time. Let's see if I can't get this earpiece working. That seems to be okay for now. Good. Having huge trouble with our little earpieces at the moment. They're such finicky little components, and if they jiggle ever so slightly, we lose comms with the outside world. Oh. Apologies, everyone. I made a big error by saying the Birmingham ladies. It's the Nkuhumas ladies, the Nkuhumas pride earlier. So apologies for that confusion. The Birmingham boys, not too sure where they are. Probably further south and east of us. That's where they've been hanging out over the last few weeks. But they'll come back and visit at some stage. There's no doubts about that. And we're all just happy to have the Nkuhumas lioness spending more time on Juma again, and Arathusa, back in their kind of original core territory. It's a beautiful, beautiful afternoon, despite the intense heat at the moment and quite a few clouds dotted up in the sky. Great, we're going to send you back to James and catch up a little bit later.
There, everybody, are some warthogs, and I'm just trying to get my binoculars out so that I might see them. Of course, I have very high-quality binoculars, last used, as I've said, by Napoleon at the Battle of Waterloo, where he was thoroughly thumped, of course, by Wellington. Now, some tiny little piglets there. This is probably 2 mothers, 2 sows and their babies, I would guess. And they're being particularly confiding, which, of course, a lot of the warthogs here are not very. Bryan, shall we try it slightly closer? We'll just ease along the road. That is too sweet.
Okay, copy. Thank you.
Now, Lenny, you're in Arizona and you want to know about warthog babies, and it's lovely to hear from you. Thank you for talking to us. And you can see these little pigs here. I'll get to your question now, Lenny. These little pigs are standing. They're pretty new, I'd say, probably 1 or 2 weeks old, maybe 3 weeks at best. They're grazing already, and you will be astonished at the speed with which they can run. And Lenny, your question is around whether they're precocial or not. Now, for those of you who don't know, precocial means, well, I'm sure you know what a precocious child is. So precocial just means to be born pretty well developed. So like most of the herbivores are born precocial. If you think of impala when they're born, a horse when it's born, it stands up, it's able to run within sort of half an hour of birth. Then if you look at something like a human being, it's utterly useless until it's about, well, it can't move on its own until it's about a year old, and then is basically attached to home for the next 30 years if you're not quite careful about chasing it out of home. So that would be altricial. That's the word we use for that. So human beings are altricial, and Lenny, warthogs are absolutely precocial. They are born very tiny and very easy to catch if you happen to be something like a leopard, but they develop very fast. They're possibly not as precocious or precocial as something like a zebra or an impala would be, but they certainly are able to move very soon after birth. And they'll stay within, when they're this size, they'll be within pretty close proximity of a den or a burrow into which they can run, should they be threatened. Nice question. Thank you, Lenny. Hello, CJ. You're on YouTube, and how wonderful to hear from you. You're the second new viewer, of course, we've heard from today, and you say you discovered SafariLIVE yesterday, watched all the videos, and then suddenly you realized that we have a live stream. And that, CJ, is, of course, what you're watching now. You're most welcome, and thank you for giving us of your time on what is a Sunday afternoon for you. I'm not sure what it is, at least Sunday afternoon for us. I'm not sure what it is wherever you find yourself on planet Earth today. The last day of January, if you can believe it. So, just some highlights from while I was away. Cat in Tampa, you say the mating leopards, always a massive highlights. The hyenas, my favourite at the moment around here. Well, other than the wild dogs when they come. And, of course, the return of the Nkuhumas pride. What a blessing that is. And then, Vicky, you said so many highlights, I should never go away. Well, I think you might get a bit sick of me if I hung around for too long. Bryan, what I would like you to do, if you don't mind, is just turn the camera there and see, you can see those flapping things there. The elephant. Just straight off there. To your right, from there. There you go. That's it, you're in it. So everybody, I'm kind of threw Bryan under the bus there a little bit, but you can just see some elephants there. I just wanted you to see them. They're standing under a tree, flapping their ears, trying to stay cool. Apparently it's quite a big herd, and we'll pop around there and have a look just now. But you can just see what a perfect, brilliant colour they are. Isn't that lovely? All right, let's drive slowly along. And we'll go and see them. in British Columbia, this sounds incredible. You say that your highlight while I was away was the sighting of some dwarf mongoose evacuating their burrow as a result of an attacking snake. That sounds quite phenomenal. I must say, I love those sorts of tiny little things. While leopards mating are incredibly exciting always, and those hyena cubs are amazing, the elephants and all the big stuff that we see, that dwarf mongoose sighting interacting with snakes must have been absolutely phenomenal. Thank you, Annie. Thank you very much, Janet and Dallas. You say the highlight of the last 18 days for you was reading 2 books written by a chap called James Henry. That was very kind of you to take the time out to read those. I appreciate that very much. James Richard, your highlights, some of these I did see on Facebook while I was away. Jamie elegantly trying to use her vast musculature to pull a silver cluster leaf out of the way and then falling on her buttocks. Brent and Viam, of course, had a rather close encounter with a Nyala, which decided to seek refuge, either because of Viam's music selection in his car or because of the safety offered by it. That must have been an astonishing experience. And Scott, of course, having a shower with the bushbuck. Now here's the rest of this magnificent herd. This chap's come to bring us a piece of silver cluster leaf. Thank you, that's very kind of you. Thank you. That's interesting. It looks like he almost broke it off so that he could come and stand in the shade. I say he, it's not a he at all, it's a she. And I know that simply because between her front legs there are 2 swollen mammary glands. They're called inguinal mammae. The other obvious animals that have inguinal mammae out here, of course, are the primates. Bush babies, the baboons, the monkeys, and the human beings. So she's broken off a piece of tree, brought it to a sort of comfortable, shady dining spot, and is now eating very delicately. And interestingly, maybe I'm misidentifying the tree. No, I haven't misidentified it. Phew. It is not silver, you can see, and I think that's probably why she's broken it off that tree. They're not, when they go that silvery color, that's actually really interesting. They do tend to be quite bitter. The tree she's broken it off is a silver cluster leaf tree, but it's got very green leaves. And I wonder if that doesn't have something to do with the lack of water that there is around here at the moment. There are a few of them I can see around here. A few silver cluster leaves with green leaves rather than the silver ones. Here comes one, Bryan, to say hello to us. Or chase us, one of the two, I'm not sure which. She's also a cow. They're talking to each other now, these two. The big cow is talking to the one carrying her silver cluster leaf. Oh. And hello, Kathy in Memphis, Tennessee. Kathy, you want to know, I've mentioned the drought, and I've no doubt there's been lots of talk about the drought. You want to know when the rainy season normally is and when it would end. Well, we'd normally be in the height of it now. We'd normally get some rain at the end of November, pretty good dose in December, and then January and February, a little bit of March would have the main sort of deluges that come up every afternoon, and wonderful clouds building in the west. So it would be sort of January, February, March that would get the bulk of the rain, some in December and a little bit, of course, in November. But very little has come. And Brent said to me yesterday that the total rain that we've had here so far this whole season is 72 millimeters. Now that's about it's just shy of 3 inches of rain, and so that is a really tiny amount. Our normal amount would be, look at this little bull come to say hello to us. There we go. Normal amount would be about 16 inches, 500 millimeters. This is fantastic. What a wonderful way to start off. Here comes another big cow with enormous tusks. Now, Michelle, our new viewer from Virginia Beach, you want to know how long elephants spend each day eating. Michelle, the answer is a long time indeed. I think you'll probably find that 80% of their waking hours are spent trying to forage. And it's quite an interesting thing because they eat much more than Indian elephants do, for example. And that means that they've never been particularly well suited to the labors that Indian elephants have to do sometimes. They carry logs and do bits and pieces like that. And there's lots of ceremonies, of course, in many parts of Asia. But the African elephant is a hungry fellow and seems to need to eat a lot more than his Indian counterpart. So about 80% of the time that they're awake, and an adult elephant, large, fully grown adult, probably only needs to sleep between 3 and 4 hours in every 24. So you're looking at eating of about 16 to 17 hours a day. That's a long time. Can you smell them? And cat in Tampa, I agree with you completely. What did you call it? Smell-o-vision. Yes, you say you can hear them calling, and you can see them in high definition, and that sound that you heard, that grumbling sound, is just the most wonderful sound that you can hear out here. And I agree. One of the most joyful things for me about being out here is the smells, and we were just smelling the incredible smell of these elephants. They smell sort of like sweet leather, if you like, and that's, well, little woodland kingfisher got chased off there. Sort of like a sweet leather, but like a horse, I guess, but quite a lot stronger, and we've just been smelling that now. One day when somebody clever invents a way for us to transfer smell digitally, you'll be able to enjoy that too. Making short work of a silver cluster leaf. This one actually has silver leaves on it. I don't know if you can see there. You can definitely very clearly see there a different color. They're very pale green because of the silver hairs on the underside of the leaves. It does always amaze me how elephants in this part of the world over the last little while have learned to accept us. And like I say, I've said many times, and I will continue to say, we are very careful, very respectful of the distance that we keep from the elephants. We do watch their body language very carefully indeed. But 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been sitting this close to elephants. Certainly not as relatively relaxed as I feel now. So they've really got used to us, which is wonderful. Hello, Yossi. a name I've not heard before. You want to know if this is an African bush elephant, Loxodonta. You'll see there are two kinds of elephants that we get in Africa, and I suspect you probably know that. And this is the Loxodonta africana, so it is the African bush elephant, versus the forest elephant, which is Loxodonta cycloides. So let's quickly head across to Scott. He's got some exciting stuff for the lions, and there's something going on there. We'll see you just now.
Sorry, say again?
Well, look at this. There's a hyena slinking off.
Yeah, I'm going to try as well.
And quite surprised to see that there is one lurking this nearby to the Nkuhumas lioness and their buffalo kill, which you're about to see now on this side of the vehicle. I'm not sure if it has just arrived onto the scene from the smell that's being permeated from this dead subadult buffalo. And there certainly is going to be interesting to see what happens later on. And if that hyena doesn't call in for more troops, because I know Brent was mentioning that on the Sunrise Safari, there is a very big clan of hyena out to the west here that is well known for chasing lion off their kills, which is a rarity here in the Sabi Sands. It's unusual to be lucky enough to see a hyena-lion interaction. Hi, Rob in the UK, and you've been doing some research, so thank you very, very much for that. And you've managed to work out that the fifth and missing lioness from this pride is across on Torchwood, which is to the east of Juma. We are currently on the west of Juma, on Arethusa. And she's apparently mating with one of the Birmingham males. So great news, and hopefully in about 3 months or so, she will be giving birth to some cubs. Who knows, maybe some of these lionesses within this pride are already pregnant. Let's reposition quickly. I just wanted to stop here because we could see the hyena temporarily as well as the kill. How awesome is this? Lion on a buffalo kill. And while we reposition, we're going to send you back to James quickly.
Right, everybody, back to the elephants. We're being surrounded, of course, by the youngsters. The youngsters are just much more interested by us than the adults are, especially the cows. Cows tend to get over us pretty quickly. Young bulls, old bulls, and little ones often will come a lot closer than the adult cows will. And that's just because they enjoy having a little bit of an interaction with us. And that little one that you can see there, I think is the offspring of the one that we were watching eating the same tree just before you headed across to see the hyena. Seems to be considering pilfering from those lions. And he's obviously got an itchy bottom. I don't know if you can hear the rasping sound of that thick skin against the bark. Isn't that fantastic? Look here, Brian. Hello, Genevieve in New York. As we look at the kind of dry, dusty conditions there that this elephant is on. This is unbelievable. Hello. And that'll be a young bull. Genevieve, you want to know if it was to start raining suddenly, would the grass sprout? Genevieve, yes, it would. It wouldn't get nearly as long or as thick as it would have if we'd had normal rain, but it will come up for a little while. But probably beyond February, it won't. It will flush green, but it won't grow up and put up the culms and put up the stalks and the seeds and the flowers that it would normally. That's because the growth season does have a limit, and the limit, of course, is day length. So there would definitely be a flush. It wouldn't be quite the same as it would have otherwise. This is wonderful. 1, 2, 3 tiny little baby elephants around us. Just such a privilege that they have chosen to approach us and sort of feed about the place, have a look at us, watch us. I'm not going to start the engine now. This is wonderful. Very little Gracie, aged 8, Ohio. Very kind of you to say that you missed me while I was gone. Well, Gracie, I missed talking to you too. And I know you sent me a wonderful picture of me with a fish while I think, thinking that I would see some fish while I was on holiday. I did do lots of swimming. I didn't find any of those fish though, Gracie. I looked very hard for the big fish that you drew for me, but unfortunately I failed to find it, but it was a very lovely time. It's very nice to be back, and don't worry, while I was gone, Kirsty looked after Safari James for you, and for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a rather odd-looking clay animal, or clay human, and that is to go with Gracie's Safari Barbie. So Gracie, Safari James is absolutely fine. Kirsty looked after him. Great comment from Way Deep on YouTube. You say you can't imagine a planet that didn't have elephants wild roaming. Yeah, Way Deep, I think that's absolutely true for me too. And I think for many of us, and certainly for anybody who's had any kind of time with elephants, would feel precisely the same as you do. Right, as that little one walks off to join his peers, let's head across to Scott. He's got some flying scavengers to show you.
Well, aren't we getting absolutely spoilt over here? Hyena, just a glimpse of one earlier, and now another two of the undertakers of the African wilderness. These are hooded vultures, and you'll notice their beaks are very thin. One's doing some cleaning of the beak right now on the marula branch that it's perched on. You'll possibly also notice that they're very hot. That's why they're panting with their beak open. Look at its tongue there. I mean, these are remarkable shots, and look at how awesome this is. You can see the crops bulging. There's a little white bubble on the chest of the closest bird, as well as the other one that's more difficult to see now with the leaves in the way, but that indicates that these guys have already had a good meal. That crop is an extra storage system, and once their stomach is full, the meat gets stored in there. And one of the benefits of being the smallest of the vultures is that they are, you could almost say, stealthy. They can sneak in and nibble on a carcass without the lions necessarily chasing them off. Haven't seen any other vultures in the vicinity, and that's probably due to some very good housekeeping on behalf of the lion. Now, it's quite interesting. Look at this pile of loose dirt. You can see a lot of sand is here, and a lot of twigs and grass has been piled up there. And you'll also notice a lot of flies buzzing around this area. And as Andrew zooms in, you'll notice that is the stomach contents that has been pulled out of the buffalo with all the rumen, all the half chewed on grass. And they've tried their best to cover that up to prevent the smell permeating too much, as well as to stop giving vultures a clue as to what's going on. They also would have dragged the buffalo from this area to the right, to where it is now, into the shade. Well, that would have been in the shade, and it is quite well covered there in terms of a bird's eye view. And this is where all the lions are scattered out. And there's just going to be a lot of tossing and turning as they try and remain comfortable and cool on what has been an exceptionally hot day. It's a bit of a catch-22 being a lion, because you have the joy of bringing down big prey like a buffalo, but then you're competing with your pride members, which basically causes sushi buffet syndrome. So when you pay for like a sushi buffet or any kind of a buffet, you try and eat your money's worth, but then you end up leaving the restaurant in pain. So it's not necessarily a joyful experience doing those all-you-can-eat deals. And that's what's going on here. They're all paying the price now for being greedy. On top of that, they've got no water very close by, so it'll be interesting to see where they do head for their first drink of water after this buffalo, but I can assure you it's going to be a scene, because they're going to spend minutes quenching their thirst, taking on liters of water after this whole affair. Hot weather, lots of buffalo meat to chew on, and nothing to wash it down with. So there is a very slight chance that they may even make a long mission, leaving 1 or 2 of the Pride members here while the other 2 go off for a drink. That would be certainly a lot more likely if there was water nearby, just like the other day when they killed that buffalo on the edge of the quarantine clearings, which is where he's spending time with James and that herd of elephants now. But this time they are less fortunate. So another thing that'll be interesting is not only when they'll go and drink, but firstly when they actually finish this kill, because they won't abandon it. Lions will only leave a kill of a massive size once it really starts decaying terribly. They'll stay there until maggots are feeding on it. Up to kind of a week they'll stay on a carcass. But this one is not so big, so they should probably finish it off, I'm guessing, by probably tomorrow evening sometime. Maybe sometime tomorrow night they'll finish it off. I don't think this is going to be done by tomorrow morning. Still a lot of meat on that carcass. So they're going to be camped out here for quite a while. What will also be interesting, that I'm sure a lot of you are thinking about, is how long will that other lioness spend with the Birmingham male across on Torchwood mating. She's been gone from these 4 for about 4 or 5 days, I think. The lions just flick their heads up, and it's quite windy. Well done there, Andrew, not skipping a beat. And maybe that's because there's been a little bit of interactions with Hyena. I'm almost certain these vultures have been trying their luck already. So something's been going on that's making sure that these lions are on high alert. And obviously the wind makes them feel that any kind of rustle of leaves that they hear could be another scavenger approaching. That's why I think they reeled up like that, just to check what was going on. But I can't see anything. It's quite a thick area that they're in here. Yeah, Raisa, you've brought up a good point with regards to these vultures being around the carcass, and you also notice that the buffalo's eyes are still intact. And Raisa, it's a good observation. However, I think the eyes will often be targeted when they come across an animal that has not been opened up by a predator. So smaller scavenging birds like battaliers and hooded vultures that don't have the machinery to open up the tough hide of animals that have died of natural causes will often eat the eyes first. Whereas in this case, there's going to be nice little pieces of meat that they would have had access to. So that would have been their first prize. It's only when a carcass has died of natural causes, not been killed by a predator, and they can't break into it, that the eyes are the first and easiest option for them. So good observation, but it's not always that they go for the eyes first. It's not a delicacy. They would prefer to get meat if they can, and in this case, they certainly can. This buffalo has been well opened up by the lion. Hello, Anna McDougall, and you're trying to understand a little bit more about the dynamics of lions and their mating behavior. And you're saying, hypothetically, if a lioness was to go off and mate with a male from a kind of roving coalition that wasn't established in the area. Oh, you caught that sneeze perfectly, Andrew. And if she was to go out and mate with a roving male and then come back to her core territory where her dominant males that encompass her territory and probably surrounding lioness and their territories, would they kill those cubs that were not fathered by them? And yes, they certainly would. And that is why it's so important that lioness mate with the males that are dominant in their area, because they will also provide a little bit of protection for those cubs against other males, other roving males that come in. But it'll also ensure that they are not continually killed by their dominant males. So they cannot mate with males that are not established. It will end up, unless of course they mate with both, and that way it'll confuse the males and none of them will know who the father actually is. And leopardess are masters at doing that. And that is why Tundi came probably so far into Karula's territory just the other day to mate with Tingana. It was a risk she was willing to take in order to make sure that she mated with him, and she could well mate with others as well. She could well mate with other males. I'm just going to try and slip forward quickly to provide Ryan with a little bit of a gap to get into, and we're going to send you across to James again as we reposition.
Everybody, we're still here with the elephants. We thought about moving on, then thought no, we were having rather too good a time here, so we're still here. And the elephants are grazing gently across this clearing. They're going through a sort of what I guess could be termed an immature forest of silver cluster leaves. And if you look there, I mean, we're basically on quarantine clearings. And 4 weeks ago, there was nothing, these little seedlings weren't around, and suddenly they've popped up. They just kind of popped up when I left, and now they're up, and you can see them growing. And I'm not sure what will happen. They may or may not make it. They may or may not be chopped out to maintain these clearings, because of course a drought like this actually favors trees, because there's no competition for these seedlings now from any of the grass plants. So as the seedlings develop, often if there's good rain, they'll have to compete with the grass plants which have their roots in the top of the soil surface, and they don't make it. But now, because of the drought, these little seedlings have got tap roots that go down to where the little bit of water that there is, and they survive in the absence of that competition from the grass plants. And I think that's why you find there's so many little trees popping up here. Right, now Fiona, you're watching with your mother for the first time in the United Kingdom, where elephants are not very common on the ground at all. I don't think they ever were in that part of the world. And Fiona and Mary, you want to know how old these elephants are, the little ones. Difficult to answer because they're all different ages, but you saw maybe the little one that we had when we started, just been born, easily fit underneath its mother's belly when it was walking. And that basically can be done until the elephant is a year old. So none of these elephants are less than a year old. I would say that the smallest one that was scratching its bottom back there was probably about 2. If I'm not mistaken, the bull's tusks emerged at about 18 months. So I would say that was probably about 2 years old. And then if we look, I'm just trying to see that one that we're looking at there, I would put at near 15, 16, or 16. And then as we go along, I'll try and give you an idea of the ages that we have. But it's not very easy, and you only really kind of get an idea through experience. Jigger is not the quietest car in the world, so we do have to be quite careful when we're driving in between the elephants like this. Just watch their body language carefully, make sure that we're not disturbing them too much. No, Brian's just clearing a spider web with the lens there. So if we look at these ones off to our right-hand side, I'd put that one at about 10. No, I wouldn't. I'd put him about probably 7 or 8 years old, this young bull here. Maybe even less, maybe about 6. Judy in Louisville We've talked about the drought. We've talked about how much these elephants need to eat. And you've asked a question that is not easy to answer simply. I'm sure that wasn't your intent, but I'm going to give it a go. You wanted to know how far they'll have to move from the Sabi Sands should they need to eat. Because of the amount that they need to eat. Bryan's just whipping across to another elephant, making short work of yet another silver cluster leaf tree. They're very good at recruitment, are these silver cluster leaves. Judy, the answer is that, first of all, the whole of the Kruger Park, so all 2.2 million hectares and probably into Mozambique and the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park, the whole Lowveld is in a state of drought, which means that the entire area in which these elephants live is now water stressed, if you like. Now, the Sabi Sands is going to experience an increase in elephants because of all the landowners here that pump water. The Kruger is not pumping water, and certainly they've stopped a lot of the water holes that they used to pump. So what they're going to experience is an increase of elephants along the rivers. The Sabi Sands will, I think you're going to find, if this drought progresses, we're going to see more and more big herds of elephants like this trying to find food. Water for them is not going to be a problem at the moment because of the artificial water that there is all over the place. Food, yes, it will become a problem. And Judy, I think that once food runs out in a place like the Sabi Sands, you can be pretty sure that it's run out in many parts of the Kruger National Park. And so while they might be able to move up to the Mapani woodlands in the north, which would be about, well, the nearest one about 70 kilometers from here, what's that in miles? About 160 miles from here, 170 miles. They might try and find some food there and find some nourishment there. They might go into the sort of Gabbro grassland areas, which would be further to the south of us, not very far, or up around Satara, which would be another 70 or 80 kilometers to the north. Those are the sorts of distances that they might have to move. They can do that, the youngsters, even with the little ones, as long as they've got enough water to eat. Eventually, however, and this is the worry, and this is what the Kruger Park management is worried about, and they've almost kind of preempted the problem by mentioning it to the public, eventually there will be die-off. Animals will start to die. And whether the drought will progress that far this year or not, I'm not sure. And the tough management decision there, of course, Judy, is do you provide water? And in so doing, what you do is actually create a long-term problem because the food and the grazing will be overgrazed by... most of you have been watching for quite a while, but we've, of course, been operating here for the last year, full-time. That's a very, very short time out here, and it may be that we're going to be in for a pretty difficult time going forward. Now, Gilly in Milwaukee, you say that you were very interested when I said that the elephants are quite closely related to the cetaceans or the whales. Gilly, I don't think that was me, I'm afraid. And I actually heard it and I went and checked it up. And they're not very closely related. Actually, more closely related are hippo. They are the most closely related land mammal, if I'm not mistaken, to the cetaceans or whales. And the whales and dolphins, of course, do come from the same order, the same family, and I think it's the same family, cetaceans, and so they wouldn't be closely related to rhino at all. But Gilly, yes, fascinating that they could be vaguely related to hippo. And the interesting thing about that, for me, of course, is that animals or mammals evolved from amphibians, which were in turn evolved from reptiles. No, that's the other way around. Amphibians evolved into reptiles, which in turn, they came out of the water onto the land, evolved into mammals. And then the cetaceans and the hippos almost, they didn't go backwards, but they sort of re-evolved the ability to be in water. And you can see, therefore, how a hippo, which hasn't quite gone as far as a whale or a dolphin, but they have become semi-aquatic, if you like. And I suppose the seals would sit in the same kind of class. All right, I think we're going to leave these elephants grazing quietly across quarantine clearings, picking out the silver tresper leaf trees. Let's head across to the lions. There's apparently enormous action going on there. A lion has sat up. Let's go to Scott.
Welcome back, everyone, and it's with great joy that I'm chatting with Ryan from Arathusa and his guests, who are amazed by the fact that we are broadcasting these wonderful scenes live across the world to the internet. Ryan's trying to do his best to get my attention so that he can pull strange faces at me and throw me off. But what we do when he does it is that we snipe him and we put him under pressure. There we go. The camera's on you there, Ryan. Give us a smile. Looking good. Thank you. And always good to have a little bit of fun on safari, in and amongst checking out all the wonderful animals. So Ryan's guests, I think, are out on their first afternoon safari, and what a good start they've got off to, taking the heat off Ryan for the next few days, getting off to a start like this. As you can see, the lions are still asleep, and I'm expecting that they'll stay like this for quite some time. It's never good, though, to try and predict exactly what these wild animals will do, because they do have a mind of their own. But you can see she is not looking hugely comfortable. Remarkable how her tongue pulses forward like that each time she pants. Interesting question through from Donna in Jackson, who is interested to know whether or not herbivores will kind of be on extra high alert when moving through an area where a kill has been made. And I guess to a degree, Donna, if there's still the scent permeating of the lion and of the kill, that is naturally going to put them on edge. But that will probably only last for a few days, depending on the weather conditions. Of course, if there's a deluge of rain, that will wash a lot of the scent away. But yes, I'm guessing that for about at least 3, 4, 5 days after everything has been removed from here. And when hyena come in and once the vultures are finished, we probably won't even see any sign of this buffalo remaining, maybe 1 or 2 bones, but a lot will be carried off quite far from here by the hyena. And that means it'll only just be the kind of scent remaining on the grass and on the bushes where the lions have been sleeping. And as herbivores move through, yes, their senses will pick up those smells, and that will immediately put them on high alert. But I don't think they're going to kind of come here, know that there's a buffalo kill, and then come back in a week's time knowing that there could be danger simply because one was killed here. It's going to be a direct link between their senses, what they can smell, and what has happened in the area recently. So, yes, I think the final answer to your question after rambling around is a yes. There will be animals that will kind of take note of the fact that lions have been here, but no different to their movements on a daily basis. And even if lions had have slept here just for the day without having a kill, for the next few days when herbivores walk past, they're going to pick up that smell of lion, and that's going to put them on edge. And a great view of her broken bottom right canine there that you can see, as well as the flies that are giving her a hard time. It'll be interesting to know exactly how many prey items those teeth have latched onto. And I always find lions wonderful in the way that they can look so sleepy and cuddly and cute, but that can obviously change very quickly because they are the apex predators of the African wilderness. Hello, Mimi, who's just 15 years old. And I like the way you're thinking. You're thinking if there's a solution, a natural solution for the animals to try and get rid of these flies. Because like you say, if you had all these flies crawling on you, it would give you the shakes and the shivers. And it actually does, Mimi. I promise you, when there's enough flies crawling on your face or your skin at the same time, it sends a very strange feeling through your body. And I find myself often halfway through a sentence having to stop even speaking due to the shivers that all the flies cause. But I'm trying to train myself not to. I'm trying to make friends with the flies. It's not easy though, Mimi. But no, the problem is that there are no bushes that I know of or that the animals know of that they can feed on to keep the flies at bay. That's even for the animals that eat the plants, like the elephants or any of the herbivores. They also have problems with flies, maybe not as many flies as the lions and the leopards, but there's no solution that I know of, nor do the lions or the other animals. They just have to wag their tails or twitch their ears in order to get rid of the flies. Okay, well, you know.
Look at that, everybody. Sorry to drag you away from Scott. He can't hear what's going on, but this is not something you see every day. Those Nyala, which normally prance about each other like two dressage ponies, are now engaged in a terrifying battle. Look at the dust exploding into the sky. I don't want to get too close to disturb them. I think we can probably go a little bit closer, though. We're just next to the Juma waterhole, so if the Zoomy is watching us, you can just follow us around this way, and you'll see them. This is unbelievable. I think I've only seen this once before. Look at the color of the dust there. This is vicious. Vicious, vicious fight. No one's backing down. This is unbelievable. And I think it's quite possible they would have done that little dance that they do before this. And I also think you'll find that this kind of aggression is being precipitated by the fact that these bulls are coming closer and closer together because the browse is getting less and less, and the water, of course, is becoming more and more concentrated, and so the animals are going to have these aggressive interactions where they would normally, avoid each other. I don't know if you can hear them going, This could actually be fatal. Let's sneak a bit closer. Just don't want to get too close and disturb them. So the one on the right now has got the upper hand, now on the left, now on the right. Ooh, look at him, he's got the one by his neck there. I'm not sure if you could appreciate that sort of sword fighting. And the speed with which it's happening is astonishing. The speed with which they're moving their heads from side to side, blocking and parrying. I think if you were to film this in slow motion, you'd be absolutely astounded by the intricacy of what's going on here. Touch, 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 parry, parry, charge. The one on the left is smaller, hey, Brian? Wouldn't you say?
Slightly.
I mean, to avoid actually being stabbed is an amazing skill. This is incredible. See how what they try and do is the aggressor tries to get the horns into there, interlock like that, and then twist them and hold the other one's head. Touch, touch, parry. It's just like watching fencing. say you can't believe this, they really do mean business. Absolutely they do. They're not messing around here. I think that one on the right is backing away very strategically here. I think he's waiting for an opportunity to get his horns in there so that he can twist and manipulate the other one's head. This is unbelievable. Look at the dust. Isn't that a beautiful picture? Windy on YouTube, you say you don't think we've seen this before. Are we not sure that we've seen this before either, live? I've only seen this once before that I can remember. Look at that. It's just like if you think of two fences, just touching swords. Though you don't call a fencer's thing a sword, do you? What do you call it, Brian? Huh?
A rapier.
A rapier. On Gerda, on Twitter, watch this buffalo coming up here. There's a buffalo coming here. Gerda, you want to know if they could break each other's necks? Yes, they could. Probably not necks so much as they might stab each other, but they could cause... Look, this buffalo's coming in here now. This is fascinating. Why is he doing this? And I think what you'll find is the reason he wouldn't be pleased with them doing this is because this kind of behavior will attract the attentions of predators. They can hear that horn knocking. They know, and I've seen lions do this with impala, they know that those two are focused purely on killing each other. They're not going to pay any attention to a predator that might be sneaking up on them. And I suspect that's why the buffalo was unimpressed. But maybe not. He seems to have chilled out a little bit now. There he is. Maybe he thought they were stomping on the grass he was planning to eat for dinner. This is vicious. Let me just go a little bit closer. I think your question is a very valid one, especially as we watch the buffalo come up here. And, you know, when we're feeling hungry, when we're feeling stressed, nutrient-wise, or we're feeling a bit thirsty, often we do have a short temper. And I think, as you say, it is quite possible that these animals have got shorter tempers because they are stressed nutritionally and, of course, I suppose, hydrologically. This is a nasty, nasty fight. Linda Barnes on Twitter, there's the answer to your question, I think. I want to know how long they would fight for. Linda, I would suspect not much longer than 15 or 20 minutes. That was a buffalo burping just in front of us. Thank you. That was disgusting. Uncalled for. But I think you'll find 15 or 20 minutes, Linda, and they would be absolutely exhausted. They will definitely need a break now. You can see they're kind of limping about the place. And Christopher, you can see one of them did run away there. You can see panting, absolutely exhausted now. And Christopher, you want to know if it could ever result in a death, or would one of them just run away? One misjudgment during those head knocks could result in a horn through the neck. It could absolutely result in death. But such is the skill of these animals that I think you'll find it seldom does result in death. But yes, death is certainly possible. That is the victor there, and that's the bigger one. And the victor of this round, I mean, they might fight again. Wow. What a fantastic sight. And Laura in Finland, as you say, must be very careful getting too close to Nyala. They might jump into the vehicle as they did into poor Viam's little Kia, which is going to the hospital tomorrow to be fixed finally. That, of course, is a buffalo. And Gerda, like you say, the referee of the fight, the buffalo, is just making sure that everything, all decorum and etiquette is adhered to during the course of this fight. I think we have a definite winner, though. And the buffalo is now having some grass, as a buffalo does. I don't know if you heard him burping as he walked past us, but he made this tremendous belch. Can you imagine the headache he must have? Eugene, of course, had a bit of a headache today because he managed to headbutt a shelf around the workshop yesterday. I mean, that was one crunch, and a very nasty one too. But basically what happened, if you think of banging your head against a door by mistake, or slipping and smacking the back of your head on the floor, what these Nyala have done is willingly inflicted that on each other repeatedly again and again and again. And you can appreciate that their skulls must be a lot thicker than ours, designed to take those enormous, I mean, the force of those bashes is quite something. Beautiful colour, juxtaposed against this very light flush of green, which I'm told is only about 3 days old. Right, well, that was quite something. Let's press on. My intention is to head to the far east now, to Buffelshoek Dam, to see if it's still there. And while I'm doing that, let's head across to the recumbent, sleepy and fat lions with Scott. I'll see you shortly.
Well, I must say that I am very, very envious of the action that's just unfolded in front of you and James and Bryan. It's very, very rare to witness animals having a serious fight. And in all of the years that I've been out here in various parts of Africa, I have on probably one hand can count all of the fights that I've seen. So, not that we are all about violence, but it is always interesting to watch a high-intensity battle between animals, be it between predators and prey, or intraspecies, because it very, very seldom happens. And I guess it probably happens less in nature than it does, on a general rule, than it does with us as humans. I think we could all probably learn a lot from wild animals, as they are very seldom in conflict with one another. They may have conflicting thoughts, but they will often discuss things vocally before coming to actual blows with one another. So there's one lioness who's slightly distant from the rest of the pride. We left them late yesterday evening, all carpeted on top of one another, but then they weren't nearly as full-bellied as they were now, and it wasn't as hot yesterday afternoon as it is now, so no surprise that they're giving one another a little bit more breathing space today. Now, I'm sure a lot of you will probably agree that we may be able to spend our time more effectively elsewhere. We can drive around and maybe look for Tingana, or who knows, maybe if we're very lucky, the Anderson male. But go and see what else is happening here on Arathusa. And then come back to these lines a little bit later once things have cooled down. And that way we'll hopefully be able to see some action. Hi there, Rick Muller. And you're interested to know when was the last time any of these lioness had cubs? Well, sadly, since I've been here, which was the end of 2014, November 2014, the Nkuhumas pride have not had any cubs that we've seen. They've actually lost a few of the lioness to the Birmingham Male Coalition, which came through and wreaked havoc as they were establishing dominance here. So no cubs have been born to this pride since we started operating basically in November 2014 on this safari production. But we did have a few cubs for about 3 months. 2 of the Styx lioness had some cubs. There were 3 tiny little fluff balls, if I remember correctly, and they lived till about 2 to 3 months old, and sadly that was when the Birmingham males came through. They were not the fathers of those young cubs. The Matimba males were the fathers of those young cubs, and that is why the Birmingham males chased those 2 Matimba males, the older dominant males who used to be dominant over this area. They chased them away and killed their cubs to free up the Styx lioness responsibility, and therefore they could begin to mate with them. So we haven't had much cub viewing in over a year of filming, but as I keep saying, that's not a problem. We are building up cub credit, both with the lion department as well as the leopard department. We haven't had much luck with leopard cubs either, but that will change, and that's normal in any safari destination. You're going to have ups and downs and peaks and troughs with regards to game viewing. Now, Maxine Talks, you have asked a question that has kept me awake many a night, wondering how on earth do male lions know whether or not they were the father of the cubs, or more importantly, whether their coalition members were the father of any given cubs. What often happens is that a coalition, especially a big coalition like the Birmingham boys, will often split up. Now, there may be a group of 2 and a group of 3, and the group of 2 could go off and be mating with one set of lioness from one pride, and the group of 3 could be mating with lioness from another pride. Simultaneously, this is just hypothetically speaking, they can then reconverge and meet up again, all the coalition as a whole, and then do they discuss, you know, which pride they've been mating with, or do the coalition members smell the scent of various pride members on the males and therefore piece the puzzle together that mating actually happened? Or do they have long, deep, meaningful conversations amongst one another about who they've bedded? I mean, it's just, it's a great question, and one that's difficult for me to answer, because I always ask myself, how do they actually know which coalition member mated with which lioness and when, and then keep track of the gestation periods? It's really complicated, but as far as I've seen, coalition members from the same coalition will work it out, and never in my experience have I seen a coalition member incorrectly killing a cub that it should kill because it was not fathered by one of his teammates. So they tend to always get it right, but how exactly they communicate this to one another, I'm not entirely sure. Whether it's scent, whether it's vocalizations or conversations between the males, I don't know. If anybody's got any ideas on that, please put us at peace and put this myth to rest. Hi there, John in Atlanta, and you would like to know how far a certain lodge and their property is to the south of where we are. And John, the northern portion of Londolozi is a farm called Marthley, and that is probably about 3 or 4 miles away from us as the crow flies directly south. Not far at all. So we're quite close to Londolozi's northern boundary, but I've actually never been there since being in the northern Sabi Sands. I used to traverse Londolozi when I was in the south. When I started my guiding career, I worked to the west of them on the property called Singita. And sorry, John, I didn't share your question too clearly, and you'd actually not like to know where Londolozi is, but more importantly, oh, nice big yawn, whether ginger or hairy belly, the two Matimba males that I spoke of earlier that have been chased away by the Birmingham males, whether they are still there. And yes, I have heard that they are still there, John. They've got very comfortable on Londolozi and surroundings, and have even been doing quite a lot of mating with, I think, the Salala pride, if I'm not mistaken. So happy for them that they've managed to find a little piece of territory that they can still call their own. Hi there, Mark, who's watching in one of the best cities on the whole planet, Cape Town. And if you've never been and are planning a safari out to South Africa, I would strongly suggest trying to get a few days in the Cape. It's a beautiful city with lots to do, lots of outdoor activities on your doorstep, and lots of very, very tasty wine. Mark, you've noticed that this right paw that we're looking at of this lioness seems to have some kind of an injury on it, and I'm guessing you've noticed that there's an injury due to the way she moves. I'm not sure if you actually saw a little cut or anything, but thanks very much for that. Maybe she got injured while she was bringing down this buffalo. It's dangerous business taking down buffalo. They're big animals. Andrew likened them earlier to a very large goat. We were discussing whether or not they should be a part of the Big Five. And the final verdict on this vehicle is that only if buffalo are within 100 meters are they considered a member of the Big Five. If not, there's only the Big Four. Only kidding. And I guess that's just the heat and the time spent with lion that are causing us to think about these bizarre things. Oh, this is a name I haven't heard before. Hello, Claudia. And if you are a new viewer, if you're just sending through your first question, please let us know where in the world you're watching and a little bit more about you. Claudia is interested to know whether lions will ever head to waterholes in order to cool off. And the short answer is no, they won't. They will head to waterholes to drink. And I guess that may have a cooling effect on them, but they do not submerge themselves in the water. And you'd like to know why? I don't know. I mean, I find it hard to believe why they don't. Tigers do it in India, and there are lions in Africa that are completely comfortable with moving through water. Those are lions that live in very waterlogged areas like the Okavango Delta in Botswana. The lions will have absolutely no problem with water, but here in the Sabi Sands, lion and leopard will avoid water at all costs. Oh, another little sneeze there. Let's watch this right paw there. Oh, Mark in Cape Town, you are correct. Jeez. I don't know what you had for breakfast, but obviously it's honed your eyesight or your telepathy with these animals. Well spotted, Mark. And I'm so happy that the lioness got up when she did so that it could confirm your thoughts. Like I say, I'm pretty certain it got injured in this battle of taking down this buffalo last night. It doesn't look too serious though, and even though she's limping now, it's possibly because she's been resting for a long time and the wound is seized up a little bit, you could say. And maybe once she's been on the move for about 10 or 15 minutes, that injury will kind of work itself into a less painful situation. That's often the case with lion, but we'll definitely be monitoring it closely. And Claudia, back to your question, I just kind of dropped you there as I saw the lioness standing up. Yeah, I can't put my finger on it, but lion and leopard are not interested in getting wet here, even on the hottest of days. And Claudia, it is incredibly hot and humid in this part of South Africa. Today it was 35 degrees when we headed out at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Again, with a huge humidity level, very high humidity, I'd say always in the 80% plus region. And if I was a lion, I would certainly break all the rules, just like the hyena do. Well, they're not breaking any rules, but they will be one of the predators that are happy to submerge themselves in mud wallows to cool down. But leopard and lion, only if they are desperately starving and need to cross a river or find a fish in a drying mud wallow. That's the only time you'll really see them getting wet. Remarkable how nothing goes to waste in nature. And I've just spotted a dung beetle digging through the rumen, sorry Andrew, digging through the rumen of this pile of stomach content that the lions have very cleverly tried to cover up with grass. There we go, there's the dung beetle. And you can see it's got a little bolus of dung there that it's been crafting. That one's probably about half the size of a golf ball, but sometimes you get dung beetles big enough to roll a tennis ball sized piece of dung away. Some will roll the dung away, others will bury their dung balls immediately after rolling them in the spot where they found the dung, which looks like this one might be trying to do. So different techniques between the many different types of dung beetles. Some will even stay where they've buried those dung balls, and I forgot to mention that inside each dung ball will be an egg with a larvae that will hatch eventually and then feed on the larder of excrement. And some of these dung beetles actually stay and wait for the larvae to hatch and then nurse them, but that's uncommon. Usually the adults will just lay their egg within the ball, bury it below the ground, and then head off and keep doing the same thing until their batteries run out. Okay, everybody, I think enough's enough now with the sleepy lions, and let's go and see what else is happening on Arathusa. While we do so, we're going to send you back to James.
Right, everybody, here we are at Buffelshoek Dam, which of course is no more than a pile of semi-hard mud and some soft stuff here. I retrieved this from where an elephant was standing earlier on, apparently a few days ago, trying to get some mud out of this area, possibly to try and throw upon his back and thereby cool himself. So there is, as Brian just said, some water around. Now the other thing I want to show you, other than this mud, is these fish bones here. Now, it's no wonder to me that the people of Africa prior to the advent of the steel needle used fish bones like this for their sewing, and in fact I think that happened throughout the world. They are incredibly sharp, so I'm just going to put one there and I'll show you, Brian, what I mean. I'm just going to drop my mud. And if we look at it there, you can just see how incredibly sharp they are, and I'll push one into my skin because I'm so brave, aren't I, Brian? Mm-hmm. So brave. And, well, this one's not actually going in, but normally they go quite a long way in, and when Andrew and I, on Christmas Day, did our best to save that impala from a certain death here, this is what stuck into our feet and cut us, and you can see incredibly sharp. And there were thousands of little tilapia in here, lots of catfish, and, you know, their bones remain in the mud here. So that is Buffelshoek Dam. Now, you may have heard us talking a little earlier about Safari James, a clay man. This is the clay out of which he was made. It's not very good at the moment, so I think rather than making a new one, what we'll do is go and retrieve the old one, and we'll bring him on drive and show him to you possibly tomorrow morning. Right. I've now, of course, got to drive with the grubby hand. What I'll do first, however, is wash my hand. Now, Danny, you're in Chicago and you want to know, is there a difference between a dam, a pan, and a waterhole, or are they used interchangeably? There is a big difference. A little bit better. Danny, a dam is something that we're in now, and a dam, of course, is a man-made structure. So if Bryan pans across here, you'll see the wall that is damming or stopping the water of this drainage line flowing down where it might otherwise. So that's what we refer to when we talk about a dam. A pan is a more natural indentation that starts off in a clay-rich area where maybe water gathers as a puddle, and then a warthog will come and maybe sort of fossick about in there and wallow, and then maybe something bigger like a buffalo will come and do the same thing, then a rhino, and then an elephant, and it eventually becomes an enormous depression of clay-rich, very hard clay at the bottom, and so it holds water, and that would be a pan. And then a waterhole would be anywhere where there's water, so that you could use interchangeably with any of the other two words. Okay. Now, let's go across to Scott again. I believe the lions are actually doing something other than lying about the place. I think they might even have something to eat. We'll see you shortly.
Well, I think we've just learnt a little trick, and that is if you play hard to get with these ladies and tell them that you're leaving, then they start performing. So literally, as we were driving up, she got off, followed alongside as we were driving along, and now you can see she's contemplating having a snack. She's having a starter there. She licks on the carcass. Look at all of those flies. And Mimi, you must be getting those shivers and those shakes looking at all those flies, but imagine what it's like for that lion. Look at her claws digging into the skin there. Well done, Andrew. Quick punch zoom. Awesome stuff. And let me tell you guys, the cameramen are doing a great job with this little camera. The zoom is wonderful, but very difficult to use. So I hope you're enjoying the great camera work that he's pulling off here. What I thought this lioness was going to do initially was actually try and pull the buffalo into the shade. They can be quite clever like that. But as you can see, she's also definitely interested in having a snack. The other three are all way off in the shade, although one's just, I see, on the move there. So maybe she just got up for a toilet break. But the other two are in the area where she's heading towards there. There you can see one and the other quickly. Hello to Paula in Virginia, and you would like to know exactly how many lions are in the Sabi Sands at the moment and how many can the Sabi Sands ecosystem support. Good questions. I'm not entirely sure how many lions are in the Sabi Sands at the moment, but what's important to remember, Paula, is that even though there may be some that come into the Sabi Sands, there will be quite a few that live on the buffer zones. So between us, well, we are basically open to the Kruger National Park on our one boundary and the Manyaleti, which is also a government-owned reserve to the north of us, and all of us are open to the Greater Kruger National Park. So the animals have got complete free reign over 3.9 million hectares if they desire. And like I said, though, some prides will spend time in the Kruger and the Sabi Sands, and others will spend time in the Manyaleti and the Sabi Sands. But I would say that there's probably anywhere between 60 and 80 lions that can be seen within the entirety of the Sabi Sands, but I'm not too sure of the exact figures at the moment. We will be able to find that out, and maybe the girls in FC can check up on a research organization called Panthera. I think they may have some idea as to how many lion and leopard we're seeing at the moment. But yeah, I would guess somewhere between 60 and 80. Maybe that's a bit high, maybe between 50 and 70 lions. And the numbers will fluctuate greatly, Paula. In terms of how many the Sabi Sands can hold will also depend on how much prey is in the Sabi Sands and the state of the vegetation. Now we're in a drought, obviously there's not going to be as much prey here as expected, or as in times of plenty, so many, many variables that will affect how many lions can be here. Awesome stuff. Well, surprise, surprise, and that's why I said you've got to be careful not to try and predict what wild animals are going to do. The last thing I expected them to do was to start feeding with the sun so high up in the sky, yet here they are doing just that. So we're in luck, and this is definitely against what I was expecting.
Yeah, put where now? Keep coming.
Para transformer on triple M info.
Yeah, coming put all down.
Louis.
So just listen to the game drive radio there. And my earpiece is also causing trouble again. Okay, looks like the earpiece is back in action now. Hi there, Linda. I guess you must be thinking about the other lioness from this pride, Amber Eyes, who's busy mating with one of the Birmingham boys, and whether or not they'll be doing any feeding during the mating. And Linda, no, as a general rule, when big cats are mating, that is what they focus their attentions on. And the same goes for leopard, although on one occasion I did see a mating pair of leopard that had caught a duiker that they were feeding on between mating. So it definitely does happen, but it's not common for them to go out of their way hunting when they're focused on the act of mating. Look at all these flies. It is scary. Ugh. And cat in Tampa, yes, flies are hugely annoying, but they provide a hugely important role in the ecosystem and on our planet as an entirety. They make sure dead, rotting flesh is broken down. Maggots are masters of feeding on and cleaning out and making sure that nothing goes to waste and everything gets recycled back into the nutrient system in a hygienic way. Interestingly enough, look at that claw latched into the buffalo's hide there. You can also even see a tick latched onto the buffalo's hide, just above the claw. So yes, they are incredibly important animals, the flies, and there's even a few thoughts that the fly is going to save the planet because they are such a high source of protein, maggots at least, the larvae of flies, and because they can feed on just about anything and break down a lot of unwanted, unedible goods, fly larvae may actually be the protein that keeps this ever-expanding planet alive. So a horrible thought, but a reality, as we are exploiting the planet far faster than too much basically for our population growth. And like I said, there are people that believe that the fly is going to be the animal that is keeping us alive when push comes to shove. So interesting thought there. And yes, they are annoying, but they do serve a very, very important purpose, Archer. Sorry, Nikki, I'm having a nightmare with my earpiece. Nikki's directing the show, so I'm only catching little bits and pieces of her messages, but now it seems to be okay. Hello to Gwen, who's watching in Virginia, and you would like to know if these lionesses are all related in some way or another, and if so, who's who. I don't know who's who, Gwen, but they are in all likelihood related. Mothers, daughters, sisters. There are, as far as I'm aware, 2 older lionesses and 3 slightly younger lionesses. But in the time that I've been here, I haven't got to know exactly who's who. They're also difficult animals to distinguish, lion, not as easy as the leopard because they're more plentiful and because their markings may not be as easy to distinguish between the leopards. So we don't basically know the lions as intimately as we know the leopards, or at least I don't. And it's difficult to be certain of exactly who's who. But most prides are going to contain sisters, older aunts, and obviously the siblings. There are young sons up to a point, up till about 3 years of age, which is usually when they'll get chased off by their fathers. But no, I don't know who's who, but yes, certainly they are related. Wow, listen to this, crunching through the bones. I'm not sure if you heard that. You may well have. Well, interesting comment that's just come through from Mimi, who's watching in Winnipeg and has obviously watched a video that Craig, one of the Cheetah Plains guides, posted of Amber Eyes, the missing lioness from this pride, who was seen trying to seduce the Birmingham boys, and apparently, according to Mimi, they weren't looking very impressed with their seductive dance moves that the female felines have to perform in order to arouse the males. And she says she should take some lessons from Tundi. And I couldn't agree more. I'm going to make, I think I can hear a vehicle approaching. And we have been here for quite a long time, so I don't want to overstay our welcome. And I'm just going to get on the radio quickly and just check if I need to make space for somebody. So sorry, Mimi, but thank you for that update on Amber Eyes' failed dance moves. In her defense, though, maybe it's the Birmingham boys' lack of know-how when it comes to the art of mating that is causing them to have this confused, bemused look as to what to do next. Okay, well, let me try and work out what's going on with the vehicle movements around the sighting. There's a maximum of 3 vehicles per sighting, and like I say, we have been here a long time, and we don't want to overstay our welcome if it's going to impact on the other guides and their guest day. So let me do some work on the radio. We may be gone when you get back, or we may be here. Time will tell.
Right, we are driving down the Cheetah Cutline, everybody, and it's at this stage that I like to sit up where I am now so that I may gaze to the far east into Torchwood, look over my shoulder into the magnificence of Juma, and scan the horizon for wonders that we can then point this camera at and show you. Not much in the way of wonders at the moment, other than the fact that, like I say, it looks a lot greener than it did when I left. But the telltale signs of an ongoing drought are all over the place. Underneath the little flush of green, there remains this kind of brown and dusty landscape. And if you were in any doubt at all, having watched those Nyalas having their fight with each other, you would have seen immediately how dry the soil underneath that little green flush is. So it is still very dry. I don't think it's going to get too much wetter. There is a small school of thought that says there's going to be some rain at the end of February, but I'm not really sure. Bryan in Toronto, you ask a question that I think has puzzled many people for a long time. And as I was a child, when I was a child, no one could ever satisfactorily explain to me until I kind of got into guiding, and then I thought about it a bit and to chat to people. You want to know how it is that these dams get restocked with fish after they've dried out. You saw the bones there, and you'll be amazed to know that nobody will come and restock them. And they will restock themselves entirely. And that, well, in the case of the catfish, their eggs can lie dormant for a long time, and then when the water comes, they will hatch, and they can sit on the vegetation. The eggs can sit on the vegetation. The catfish themselves can sit underneath the mud for a while, and quite a long time before they die, and they will then kind of spawn immediately. I think you'll find that in the dung of fish, you'll find a lot of eggs, or caviar, freshwater caviar, that will be dumped in the water when they go and have a drink. So I think that's probably the two main vectors: vegetation, dormant eggs, and eggs that travel either on the legs or in the bowels of birds that come, or any other animal that might come and eat the fish, maybe even with terrapins and that sort of thing. So I think, Bryan, that's probably how it happens. But a very good question. You build a dam somewhere on a farmland, and suddenly it's full of fish. Christopher in Germany and Anne in Germany and Christopher in Arizona asked a similar question about those Nyala and what on earth they win if the winner, I said that they were having a conflict over food. It's not quite that simple. I don't think they're having a conflict over food so much as their tempers are flaring because of the shortage of food. And so I think what you'll find happens is that because they are stressed from a nutritional and water point of view, they will find themselves in closer contact with each other than they would be normally, and therefore they will fight. I don't think it's a question of one kind of excluding the other from food, although there will be a certain amount of territoriality in that. And so he'll just have to move a bit further away and try and look in other places for food, the loser. They're pretty equi-sized, so I think, you won't have to stay too far away from that territorial male. And the territorial one, or the winner, will obviously have prime sight. He will have the rich food closer to the water. And I think that's what that conflict was about. Nice question. And Wicked Ange, lovely Twitter handle, the best we've had so far in my short work cycle of approximately 1 hour and 50 minutes. Wicked Ange, you want to know, do Nyala get concussion or any of the other antelope that bash their heads together? I imagine there's an element of it, but not like you and I would have if we ran into each other headlong and bashed our heads together. We'd knock each other's senses or unconscious. The brain would smash into the front of the skull, and that would bruise, and that's what causes a concussion. And if it was severe enough, the brain would actually shift in the brain case, and that causes what causes brain damage. With a Nyala or any other antelope that is designed to sort of crack heads like that, the skull is thick. It's much thicker. You'll probably find that there's some kind of spongy material in the, what do they call it, the cerebrospinal fluid. Oh no, that would be in your spine. But that fluid that is between your skull and your brain, you'll probably find in those antelope that use their heads so much more. It probably protects the brain a bit. Remember, the brain's only about that big. In a horse, the brain is the size of an apple or peach, right? So, I mean, that's only that size. So in Nyala, it's probably about that big. So if you think of a, I don't know, fairly average-sized plum, that's about the size of a Nyala's brain. Unlike ours, of course, which are very large. Some people I know use less than a peanut's worth, but certainly potentially we're intelligent. I did see this actually, and I became deeply excited by it. You say your highlight of the last 18 days or so was that sable that was seen on the Djuma Dam wall at night, and it wasn't found again. And I heard it being reported. We've got a little WhatsApp group that goes between the lodges around here. It was reported at Cheetah Plains, then I think on Torchwood, and then after that it walked across the Djuma Dam. And what a wonderful sighting that was. It's a great pity we couldn't find it again. I've never seen a sable in this area. I've only heard of them 3 or 4 times. So I'm reacquainting myself with this vast reserve of ours and hoping to find 1 or 2 leopard tracks. I haven't seen any. That might be because I don't remember what they look like. I'm hoping that I might find 1 or 2. Haven't found any yet, and I would be tremendously excited to see the new leopard that you all saw mating with Tingana the other day, Tandy. And I believe Karula was also mating with Tingana again. Again, I must question the virility of our friend Tingana and whether he is actually doing anything useful with these mating opportunities by way of leaving a Darwinian legacy. Ah, well done, Bryan. Bryan has just spotted a tortoise, and I was asked a question on my Facebook page today about aging tortoises, and unfortunately I didn't have a chance to answer it, but I'll answer it now. I think the signal is probably a little bit dodgy here, so I'm not going to move too much. But I heard that you can age a tortoise by the number of rings that it has on the scoots. Now, the scoot is that kind of, well, let me actually just get out and show you. Sorry, Mr. Tortoise, I mean you no harm. Right, so a scoot would be this hexagonal section here of the plastron, at least of the carapace, which is the top part of the shell. And you can see these rings, concentric rings here, that go along. Now, I always heard that it was a bit like a tree, that if you just counted those, you could get the age of the tortoise. That is not, in fact, the case, because while a tortoise does grow almost continuously throughout its life, in times of nutritional stress, like now, for example, it may well not get new ridges to the scoots. It may stop growing for a while, and then when there's a good year and there's lots to eat, and for this leopard tortoise, that would mean lots of vegetation and roots for it to get its little teeth into, then it might put on 3 or 4 or 5 different sort of additions to the scoots. So that's apparently not a very good way of aging them at all. So I used to think that, but apparently not so much. And a tortoise like this, I mean, I've seen leopard tortoises in the Eastern Cape that are, they're sort of that big. Now, these ones here don't tend to get much bigger than this, and I suspect that's precisely because there's something in the Eastern Cape that allows them to grow much faster than they do here. Quite interesting, Bryan. I don't know if you can see can you see that little trough there? Mm-hmm. You see that? Yeah. That's an injury. This thing was obviously attacked when it was little. So while these scoots were being, or these additions to the scoot were being made, something smacked it on the head or on the back. I wonder what it was. It's very kind of concentrically flat. It almost looks like an iron bar, but I don't know of any predators out here that use iron bars. So that's quite interesting. Might just be a deformity. All right, we'll leave him to go on his way, and we shall go on our way. Our next port, of course, call will be Treehouse Dam. I want to go and see that now, and then we'll decide from there. I think we'll probably meander slowly towards the hyena den. Right. Now, we've been seeing lots and lots of snakes recently. Found one in the camp today that Scott fished out of the washing machine with his bare hands. Of course, Scott has now got something that eats snakes, and that's not himself.
Well, as James says, it's been a snake-filled morning here at Juma. Look at that eye. I love their eyes, the snake eagles. They've got a very distinctive posture as well. They're very upright and have got a very bulbous head. As I was saying, though, snake-filled morning. Jamie had the East African shovel snout, the first time I've ever laid eyes on that interesting snake. Then there was a report from Mama Z, our housekeeper, who was in the shower/laundry. Oh, off it goes. Well done, Andrew. Doesn't skip a beat, Andrew Joe Francis. And let's hope that the snake eagle has a successful afternoon hunting. And just waving to Eugene, one of our tech guys, who's behind us. He's just picked Mama Z's replacement up, Flo, who's gonna relieve Mama Z while she's on leave. Anyway, Mama Z was doing her last batch of laundry before heading off on leave, and managed to find a little snake in what's one of the 3 showers or bathrooms that the crew use at the Juma research camp, the DRC. And that little snake was found coiled up eventually in the washing machine, but thankfully not a venomous one. And got a little video of it on my Instagram page, Scotty D Safari. Also, it's on my Facebook page, Scott Dyson Safaris, if you want to see that snake from this morning. And interestingly enough, Nikki and myself were going for a little jog this morning after the morning safari. And as we ran out the gates to the DRC, Nikki spotted a snake that I almost stepped on. And that was a tiny little Mozambican spitting cobra. So 3 snakes within the period of about 4 hours, which is really, really fortunate. It's really good going. And the reason why we're seeing so many more snakes than normal in normal summers, because there's not nearly as much cover carpeting the ground as there would be at this time of the year. The little bit of green you can see now is literally a quarter, not even, it's a tenth of how much cover would usually be on the ground. And even small snakes are going to be relatively easily spotted due to the drought. What that means is that that bird that we've just seen, the brown snake eagle, is going to have a good summer. Easy snake catching conditions. Wow. Diane, small little round of applause there for you. Got a little fist pump from Andrew. What more would you want, Diane? Diane has done her homework and research and has made a great observation regarding that brown snake eagle that we've just looked at. And for the raptors, the birds of prey, some are called eagles because they fit a certain profile, and one of those major profiles is that eagles have got feathered legs. However, the brown snake eagle doesn't have feathered legs, so I'm not sure how it managed to get snuck into the eagle category. It obviously fits the other profiles that are required, but just skips the feathered legs. But obviously you get buzzards, goshawks, falcons, harrier hawks, different kinds of hawks. So different kind of classes of the predatory birds. And well done, Diane, on noticing that. The brown snake eagle obviously had somebody high up in raptor society that snuck them into the eagle bracket many years ago. There's politics in the bird world as well, and bribery and corruption, and obviously the snake eagle was involved in such a deal. Ex-Powlet, another new name, and good to have you with us. I'm just going to continue a little bit further, or just pull over here. Come on, rust bucket, don't do that to me. This vehicle is called the rust bucket. And I'm just going to pull over here, and you'd like to know if there's something called an African owl. I forgot my book, but I've got my phone. I forgot my bird book, sadly, but I've got an app on my phone to show you the different owls. Oh, Andrew can't resist. He's going to get you a sneak peek of Eugene there. And there's Flo. Well done, Andrew. And good stuff. So, you'd like to know if there's an African owl. There's an African barred owlet, and there is an African scops owl. So I'm going to go through the names here for you. Owl, African grass. Owl, African scops. Owl, African wood. So a lot of them are called African something before their name. Then there's also going to be the African barred owlet. So there's a couple that have got Africa in the name, and a total of, how many owls here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 owls in South Africa. I don't think we get all of them here, but a large majority we do. And hopefully when we are spending a little bit later out at night, I'm not sure when we're going to be changing our sunset safari time, but once we do start spending a little bit later out at night, more into the cover of darkness, we'll start seeing more owls, ex-Powlets. But for now, we're finishing a bit early. The sun is setting earlier and earlier each day. So we're probably not going to be heading out later at any point. We're just going to wait for the sun to catch up to us. And then, if anything, we're going to start heading out a little bit earlier in the afternoons as we get deeper into the winter, so that we don't spend too long out with the spotlight. Also, I must remind everyone now, this is a good opportunity talking about changing times of safaris. As of tomorrow, we will be getting to sleep in half an hour more in the morning. Yabo! Half an hour extra sleep for us, and I'm not sure what effects that has on you depending on your time zones, so apologies if it doesn't suit you, but we are going to be going out at 5:30 Central African time, whereas at the moment we've been going out at 5. And enough of that, over to James with another raptor.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the ornithological sighting of the day. I see Scott's snake eel and I raise him this steppe buzzard. Steppe or common buzzard, and people often want to know what steppe means. The steppe, of course, is a part of Russia, and that's where this thing will go to during the winter time or their summer. Wouldn't want to be in Russia during the winter. Only madmen want to be, and Russians want to be in Russia during the winter time. Now, the diagnostic thing about it, just while you're looking at it there, is that the pale feathers just above the legs, they sort of cross over the chest, just underneath the chest region there, and that is very diagnostic and makes very obviously a steppe buzzard. And if Bryan scoots across here to the book, you can see very clearly what I mean. There is the steppe buzzard or common buzzard, and that line there, you can see that? You can see it's kind of barred up until there and then striped from there down. So you've got the bars on the top and the stripes from that stripe, and that's precisely what that bird is. You can see that very obviously. Okay, very nice. Now, well done, James Richard. I believe you have increased your bird list now to 102 feathered friends. The brown snake eagle, not unfortunately my steppe buzzard, took you to that position of 102. That's not bad. I think you probably got another 100. Oh, I forgot, I'm not allowed to wear my glasses. We're live. Very bright glare in the sun. You probably got another 120 or so birds to go, and I think there's somebody, I keep forgetting who it is, I'm sure she's in Britain, who has about 225. It's Joan in England, I think. I think it may well be Joan, has got about 220 birds, and Mike in Florida is on 223. So between Joan and Mike, I think you'll probably find the record. And I don't believe that the total bird list, so any bird, you know, birds that have been seen once or twice even, I think every year you probably could possibly see 220 or 40 or so. And I think what you'll find is that the total bird list is about 310. Yeah. And unsurprisingly, Mike is finding it very difficult to add to his tally. So Mike, yeah, especially in a dry year like this, you're going to find it almost impossible to add to that tally of 225. You know, I'm sure you've noticed this season has been particularly poor for birds. And when it gets very wet, you'll find lots of little vagrants flying through, and then you might be able to push it up. Like I say, a total bird list in this area probably of about 300, maybe 310, and that means, you know, even the one-time visitors. 225 is very good for this area. I'm not convinced that Jigger's clutch is entirely happy. Scott Burns, you say. Welcome back, thank you, Scott. And that the young ones looked after the place well in my absence. Scott, I'm particularly nervous at my age, so, you know, the less reference to it, probably the better. But you've got a bird list of 54, and you want to try and reach 100. Scott, I think if you keep watching, you will get there, and I will certainly point some out to you. Virtual twitcher. Woo! Diane, you're on 125 for your bird list. That steppe buzzard brings us to 125. Good job, you're about halfway there. I'm still very impressed. I think to get 200 birds, having watching this from Florida or Britain, is quite astonishing. And it's all very well if you're sitting here and if something flies over, you're walking off after it and look at it with your binoculars. But for the cameraman to actually see half of the birds that we go, oh look, is amazing. Ohio, you are coming out in June on a medical mission. That sounds like good news for the people of this area. I'm not sure where in South Africa. Tell us about that. You want to know what we do if we find a snake in a guest's room. What would we do? You say you're terrified to death of snakes. Angie, you'd be so surprised by how few snakes are found in guest rooms. I have had to take a few out myself. The most common one, of course, is something like a brown house snake, which we found today, or Mama Z found today. I must just describe this to you before I go on to answer your question, Angie. I was about to clean my teeth this morning, standing, sort of a bit groggy-eyed at the beginning of my work cycle. I applied the toothpaste to my toothbrush, which needs to be replaced, by the way. Not that that should interest you. And as I was about to wipe my pearly whites, there was a great yelling from Mama Z next door. She went, "Ah, yeah, 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 yeah." And then she came running out of the bathroom, and the earth shook. And I rushed out and I said, "Mama Z, what is the matter?" And she said, "Nyoka, nyoka," which means snake, snake. So, of course, at that stage I was dressed in nothing but a pair of boxer shorts with some sort of foam around my mouth. And I went off into the bathroom to try and find the offending reptile, and it had gone underneath the washing machine, and eventually Scott retrieved it. Anyway, so that was a harmless brown house snake. But Angie, Mozambican spitting cobra is the one that we most commonly find in buildings. That is quite a, potentially dangerous snake, mainly because they're quite slow, but if you don't notice them there, they do get scared, and so they will sit up and they can spit at you if you're not careful. It's so unlikely though, and if we do find a snake in a room, or if a guest finds a snake in the room, they normally just call us, or if we obviously don't have guests, but if you're at Arathusa or Vuyatela or Gallagher, they will simply call one of the rangers who will come in, grab it with the snake tongs and take it out and release it quite a distance from your room. So I really wouldn't worry about the slightest danger. But tell us where you're going. It'll be fascinating to know which part of South Africa is going to be privileged to be serviced by your medical skills. So you want to know about snakes again? It's amazing how when you start talking about snakes and questions start to flood in, because people are so fascinated by them, either terrified or amazed. And so you want to know if we're seeing more snakes because of the rain. And Scott said, well, possibly also because there's so much, the vegetation is so sparse, so we're seeing them more. I think it's probably a combination of the two. I often find that Scott's interpretation of the wild are incredibly astute and on the money with things, and so I think you will find it's probably largely to do with the sparse vegetation, but also the rain will bring out a lot more insects, which in turn will bring out frogs and perhaps reptiles, and the house snake we found today had definitely eaten something. It was a little snake like that. I suspected it eating a gecko or a lizard, and they would of course have to be more obvious trying to catch the insects that would have come out as a result of the little bit of rain that we've had. There's not a lot going down on Philemon's Cutline. Thank you, Kathy in Florida, for your kind welcome back. You want to know how many birds there are on my list? I actually don't keep a list. I know to some that might be very strange, but I'm not. I'm far more interested in the ins and outs of the different species than I am by kind of counting them. And that's not to say that counting them is bad at all. I have definitely had stages, so if I go to a new place, I become a twitcher immediately and I want to see as many birds as possible. But I don't know what my total list is, I'm afraid, Kathy. I always loved having twitching guests on Game Drive, though, because obviously, you've seen, we've had wonderful lion and elephant sightings today, but sometimes you're driving around and you're not seeing any big game, but there are always birds about the place. And if somebody is a twitcher and loves our feathered friends and comes out from overseas to see them, there's a constant source of amazement and amusement. Speaking of which, Bryan, there's a small Puritan bush at exactly 9 o'clock from where we are now, and in it there is the bandit of the bush. You see him? That's the bush. That's him. You got him there. Just to the left. I think he's flown. Oh, he has flown. He was right there. That was a red-backed shrike, and they've got that kind of bandit's mask, which of course you can't see now, so he's not there. Right, that's the red-backed shrike, which I believe in Britain is called just the shrike, because... Oh, you got him. Oh, well done. Got him. There we go. Red-backed shrike. There we go, with his, as Nicola says, his Zorro mask. So I'll have to have a word with her about that. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's called a shrike, just the plain old shrike in the UK, because I think that's the only shrike you get there. Bad luck. But he will go back to the UK and Europe come April, probably. April or May. Very brilliantly coloured, isn't he? Completely disappeared now. Right, we're not far from Treehouse Dam, which is a dam, not a pan. And there is actually a natural spring in Treehouse Dam. Or not a spring, there's definitely water flowing underneath the drainage line there. So let's see if there's anything there. Bryan, of course, also only got back yesterday, and so... Oh, hang on, let's quickly go across to a potentially new bird with Scott.
Now, I know a lot of you are working hard on your bird list. This bird is working hard on staying on that little branch in the windy weather. How awesome is this? And that will be a new bird for a lot of your bird lists. You may be wondering why I was leaning down like this. I was just checking the monitor carefully. So that's what I was doing there. Hello, everyone. And that was a ground scraper thrush, which I am certain will be a new bird for a lot of your bird lists. Beautiful markings on its face and also lots of spots on its chest. And we don't see them very often, the ground scraper thrush. Really enjoying the breeze, the cool breeze, because it was exceptionally hot as we started off the Sunset Safari. Now it's becoming very, very enjoyable to be out, weather-wise. And I'm thinking of popping into the Gallagher waterhole to see if anybody's quenching their thirst there. And I'm told James is planning to head to the Hyena den a little bit later. That's a great plan. A very, very good plan, which I had not thought of, so I'm glad he did. Now, I completely forgot to mention this earlier, but for those of you who were on the Sunrise Safari, when was it? It was yesterday. We were just trying to find out where there were, or what a squirrel may have been alarm calling for off on Arathusa. And I jumped out the vehicle, had a look around the bushes, couldn't find what the squirrel, and the squirrel was still in the bush looking intently, still alarming and whatever it was that was in there. And one of you managed to get a screenshot of that whole event and found a slender mongoose hiding in the bushes that we overlooked. So, well done for those of you, for the one person who did find that slender mongoose hidden away. At least that myth has been busted. The squirrel wasn't imagining things. And what's interesting is that when I did a jump pretending that I had found a snake or something scary and I just simulate getting a fright, my cell phone came flying out of my top pockets and landed on the ground there. And I only realized when I got back to camp that I had lost it somewhere. So none of you noticed that, but one of you was close, sharp enough to notice the slender mongoose. It's interesting though, because quite often you do help us find things that we've left behind. James often leaves his binoculars at various places when he's on his walks. And on a couple of occasions, you've certainly helped us when we have misplaced things. No ways! Mike in Florida, another bird for your massive bird list. You are now on, I think, 224. And very happy that I could notch up another one for you. It's getting very tricky for you at the moment. Understandably, you've only left with some difficult birds. The violet-eared waxbill occurs here. I've seen one. If we manage to get that on camera, that'll be a small miracle. And you'll probably find we'll be doing live safaris into outer space before we get you that bird, but anything's possible. Oh, well, that's a good sign. A young Kudu bull heading in the same direction that we're heading in, and that is towards the water. There's a few more ahead of us as well that I think we may be able to get you some better views of in this little gap right here. It'll be brief, and you'll just see their vertical white stripes, very large corkscrew horns, heading to the waterhole where we are heading. So let's go and loop ahead of them. We'll wait for them patiently there, and who knows, there may already be some other animals taking a drink. Actually, let's just do this. Give you an idea of what's what and where's where, as well as a possible glimpse of the kudu that are passing through this small clearing. And beyond the kudu is a gate, opening in that wooden fence. That is the entrance to the DRC. That's where the little Mozambican spinning cobra was this morning, and that little blue tarp there is a side cover, and then there's the roof where the vehicles live underneath, and then there's the kudu on the way to the waterhole. So, this is the view we have as we drive out of our gate. This is what we look out onto. Hi there, Danny in Chicago, and you would like to know if it's dangerous to go running in the bush. And yes, the immediate answer to that is a definite yes. It is far more dangerous to run in the bush than it is to walk in the bush. And the simple reason for that, Danny, is that you are going to get yourself into a dangerous scenario far quicker if you are moving quickly. If you are walking and moving very slowly, you would have more chance of seeing danger, hearing danger, or responding and even hearing a warning, a growl, hearing a branch break of an elephant or a growl from a lion or a leopard saying, hey, that's close enough. But if you're running, by the time you've stopped, you may have moved a few meters over that kind of barrier or that line where the animal will now feel that it is no other option other than to attack as opposed to flee. So yes, running is more dangerous. There is also the chance that by running you will trigger the chasing mechanism of predators. But that's less of a concern for me. The main concern for me is that you'll be moving too quickly to stop and hear a warning, or you'll run into buffalo or elephant, whereas if you're walking, you would have probably had a much greater chance of seeing them or hearing them. Having said that though, Danny, I have run in wild areas unlike the quarantine clearings, which we're very lucky to have here, and that's where we run around now. Because it is open, and even though something could happen, like a pride of lion could kill a buffalo a couple of 100 meters from me, that's what happened the other day. But that's a lesser of a concern for me. The main concern for me is that you'll be moving too quickly to stop and hear a warning, or you'll run into buffalo or elephant, whereas if you're walking, you would have probably had a much greater chance of seeing them or hearing them. Having said that though, Danny, I have run in wild areas unlike the quarantine clearings, which we're very lucky to have here, and that's where we run around now. Because it is open, and even though something could happen, like a pride of lion could kill a buffalo a couple of 100 meters from me, that's what happened the other day. even though something could happen, your chances are fairly good in that open clearing. You would need to be very switched off not to see something over there. So that's where we run here, but we have been less fortunate in other areas of Africa, more remote parts with thicker vegetation and no clearing right on your doorstep. There, I've also run with no problems whatsoever up till date, but it is a risk I take, and every time I go running in the bush, I know that there is more chance of something going wrong than if I was going on a walk. There's no two ways about that. Good, well, the waterhole is empty for now, but we know for a fact that kudu definitely making their way. Well, we've got a very tasty question through from potatoes, carrots, yum. That is the most bizarre name I've ever heard of, and we get a lot of bizarre names coming through. So you are officially the winner, and I find your name delectable. This is live, and the fact that I'm speaking to you with your bizarre name is testament to the fact that it is not pre-recorded, it is unscripted, unedited, and we love having strange people like Potato Carrot Yum along with us for the safari. Like I said, Potato Carrot Yum, we have got some kudu on the way, but again, because this is live, while there is nothing happening, you just have to sit here patiently. Oh. Or you can rely on your very nifty cameraman to find a Cape turtle dove.
And there was a terrapin.
And there was a terrapin, okay. So Andrew's just making sure that it was actually more. Oh, there's two terrapins, which are the freshwater turtles that have just popped up their heads there. Not easy to see, but you would have noticed that. There was another bird calling a little bit earlier. And that was a cuckoo, and there's a lot of doves coming in now. One just called kru-kru-ru, as it came into land. So, happy hour, it appears. They're all coming rushing in. Very pretty birds, and I guess you could like them to impala, the most plentiful antelope in this area. And just because the Cape turtle doves are plentiful, or just like anything in life really that's plentiful and not rare, it tends to become a little bit overlooked. Black-headed oriole calling you from the distance. Jeez, Andrew, that was ambitious. Oh. Hello, Darlene in New Hampshire, who would like to know if we ever see malachite kingfishers here at Juma. And yes, we do. And we have seen a few in the summer months. I don't know, we didn't see many during the winter months, but certainly in summer around Buffelshoek waterhole, there are some, but I don't think there's any there now because there's no water in it. And unlike a lot of the other kingfishers that actually don't eat fish, the malachite kingfisher does, and therefore needs a water source to live at because it needs fish that live in those waters. So I'm guessing that's why we're not seeing any on Juma at the moment. There could be some living at the Arathusa waterhole, but we're not going to find any at the two artificially pumped waterholes here on Juma. So that's the reality of things. There's no water sources where we can find malachite kingfisher except for Arathusa. So that's possible. And we're going to send you across to James now, who's found some ellies, and we're going to wait patiently for these kudu, who I'm confident are still on their way here.
Right, look at that, everybody. That is just the most stunning thing you could ever hope to see out here. The setting golden African sun, the dust of the drought underneath that magnificent elephant's trunk and his feet. Isn't that wonderful? Now we have a new viewer whose name is Potatoes and Carrots Are Yum. Let me say that again. Potatoes and carrots are yum. And potatoes and carrots are yum. You want to know, is this live? Well, Potatoes and carrots are yum. This is indeed very much live. You're probably receiving it 5 seconds after I'm looking at here. We are here in the northeastern corner of South Africa, southern tip of the African continent, watching a stunning, stunning picture of elephants silhouetted by the setting sun in their dust. Isn't that just spectacular? Camera work by Bryan. Oh, that's too spectacular. And then we've had, while we're just really loving the sighting of this elephant herd, trying to find what little grazing there is left on quarantine clearings. Angie in Ohio, you say you're coming to Durban to do your medical volunteering. That's great stuff. They definitely need it down there, and you're hoping to pop up to the Kruger Park for a visit. I think that's very important. If you don't, oh, look at the impala in the background there. Isn't that wonderful? Just walking through the middle of the herd, right at the back. So Angie, if you don't manage to get all the way up to the Kruger, it's quite a long way from Durban. Lots of very beautiful national parks in Natal, KwaZulu-Natal, where you'll be. So I'm sure you'll be able to visit one of them if you don't get up here. Mfolozi is the big one there, and that's not far from Durban. You're also going to be quite close to the Drakensberg, of course. The same mountain range that we see here, but just a long way down it. And some incredible spots there. The Ukahlamba National Park. This is, this is breathtaking. And there's almost no sound around at the moment. We've got 2 microphones on the car, one on the camera, one on the dashboard. And the only sound that we can hear at the moment is the very distant call of a woodland kingfisher and the wind. Might just be able to hear the wind rustling the Combretum apiculatum or red bush willow tree just in front of us. I actually can't look at what Bryan's looking at. I can only watch the presenter monitor because the sun is too bright. And I have never experienced brightness like I have this year with the drought. I think it's definitely the lack of moisture in the air and the lack of cloud in the west in the afternoons has made for much brighter days than normal. That is, I mean, that's an incredible sight. Wow. That's a perfect sight for my first evening back. Flapping air, there's gently cooling the blood as it goes to the brain. Walk in front of the sun. Go on. There we go. Gracie, I share your sentiments. You say you think that potatoes are yum, but you're not so sure about carrots. Gracie, I agree. I think potatoes are tolerable. Carrots, on the other hand. Well, I mean, that elephant couldn't have been directed there more competently by Steven Spielberg. And you can see the dust blowing in the wind. It's coming out of the southeast, maybe a front coming in. Oh, that is perfection. Absolute perfection. The sun is about to dip below the horizon now. is scenes like this, of course, that drive millions and millions of Europeans, Americans, South Americans, Australians and Asians to the continent where humanity began, of course. Because a scene like this will touch something very profound and deep in the primal history of your soul. And Karina, you're in Finland, and you want to know what this smells like. Very subtle, Karina, as those impala go chasing each other about the place. Karina, I would say it just smells of dry dust at the moment. There are no kind of summery, flowery smells at all. It's very much a winter smell, actually. And so very subtle. And we're not getting that grassy smell at all at the moment, simply because there just isn't that much grass. And very few flowers anymore. It's still wonderful and clean, while it is quite dusty. And of course the smell of a sunscreen on the back of the vehicle here is quite strong as well. And there the sun has finally set. And as directed, the elephant walks perfectly into glorious silhouette. And I think on that note, with not too much time left, we'd better pop off towards the hyena den and see if we can see a hyena or two. I'm just loath to leave that elephant before it's moved out of the sun. All right, Bryan. That was spectacular. I'll just let Bryan complete the artistry of the shot. There we go. Wow. All right, on we go. That's the same herd, everyone, that we were watching earlier on. They kind of moved off down towards the west, and they obviously turned on and circled back onto the clearing. I'm not sure why. I mean, I don't think there's a huge amount there for them to eat. Maybe it's those silver cluster leaves that are popping up and they're eating the seedlings before they get too much tannin in them. Right, let's head across to Scott quickly. He's still standing by for the emergence of the great Kudu. We will make our way to the hyena den.
Well, it's great when the animals and the humans' timings are in sync, and it appears like that is the case this evening. Although we were expecting a male kudu, not a female. Either way, we'll take her happily. Look at those beautiful long legs of hers. Supermodel. And I'm quite surprised that she's alone. Look at how excited she is for this drink. She's got quite long blonde hair, but as excited as she is, she's also nervous. Oh, and guess who she's seen? She's seen the boys that we've been waiting for. And it looks like they have got the whole bar to themselves, a little romantic date. He's obviously late, and that's why he's trotting in. He's trying to be cool, but he knows he's late. So I was like, hey, I got this, coming in. Oh, cute. Well, I'm only joking. He certainly won't be courting this adult female. He is not nearly big enough. Maybe he's dreaming about her, but those horns are only about half the length that they would normally be of a bull who will successfully be able to compete for adult females. Such beautiful antelopes. Look at the water dripping from her lips. Now his. And we're going to get some great views of her sucking up the water now that she's changed angles. Isn't this wonderful? Woodland's kingfisher calling nearby. Chick, brrr. quite nice that two of them are here, because at least they've got a little bit of safety in numbers, and while one drinks, the other one's got its head up. It's quite focused on, I think, the fire that's burning at the Gallagher camp. And for those of you who are new to this live safari experience, this waterhole is situated right in front of one of the two Djuma camps. This one's called Gallagher. There's a viewing platform that you would have seen there that overlooks this waterhole for between safaris. So you are always in and amongst the action here at Juma, either on drive with your guide. Taxon or Aubrey are the main guides here, and or on your own, on your private deck overlooking the waterhole. Few hornbills calling off in the distance now. We can actually see them, Andrew, on the dead branch, and we might even get to, yeah, well done. Oh no, but look at this. I love the way they dance when they call. Let's see if it doesn't do one more. I've got a feeling it's going to fly off because its mate flew off. It's probably a little bit far for you to hear, but I'll do the noise. Oh no, but it wasn't this one calling. I could hear the other one calling. But I'll do the noise if it starts dancing again. Here it goes. That's basically what they were doing. And those are two red-billed hornbills. Looks like husband and wife there. Hello, Alexis. And you would like to know if I'm ever scared of animals. And yes, most certainly. If you come across a Cape Buffalo bull on foot, oh, look at these shots, incredible. I hope you're taking screenshots. If you don't know how to, I'd suggest working out how to do that on your device. She's got beautiful hair running down her spine as well, this lady. A fine specimen. Sorry, as I was saying, Alexis, before this lady's beauty consumed me, I was letting you know about being scared. And yes, most certainly you would be a fool not to be scared in various scenarios that you can find yourself in, especially when on foot, but even sometimes in the vehicle. It is mainly on foot, though, that I get scared. Sometimes if you startle a breeding herd of elephants or you come into close range with them without knowing that they're there, that's one of my scariest animals, actually. Female elephants with their babies. They can be extremely, extremely protective over them. So that's one animal that I'm scared. I'm actually more scared of herbivores in general. Oh, it looks like they've got a serious concert going now. 3 of them getting involved. So it's mainly the herbivores that I'm personally scared of out here. The big cats often give way to us. Unless they've got cubs, that's when the big cats get scary. And trust me, it doesn't matter how many times you've been growled at by a lion or a leopard. It's more of a bark-like grunt when it comes from a leopard. But you immediately get scared and your heart beats incredibly quickly. Look at these shots. Fascinating. Good work there, Andrew. Well spotted. Good angle. And Alexis, it's great chatting with you, and it's a good question. Another animal that I get scared of is snakes. Usually when you have to catch them and remove them from a lodge environment, it's a role of a guide, well, at least it has been wherever I've worked, that if there's a snake in your guest rooms, you get a phone call or a radio call, and then you head over with a set of goggles, or at one camp where I worked at, a really nice one, it was a big clear visor that you could put over your face without it steaming up. Goggles I tend to find steam up. That's what we're currently using. I know because we had them on this morning when we weren't sure. Oh, here comes another one. When I wasn't sure whether or not the brown snake that was in the washing machine was harmless, which it was, or whether it was a venomous spitting cobra. Anyway, catching snakes is always a scary, heart-racing affair. especially the venomous ones. And if you know it's a venomous one, then you still have to catch it, but you obviously know that if you make a wrong move, you're going to have some paperwork to deal with. Now look at his dewlap, that extra flap of hair hanging below his throat. Absolutely awesome. The females lack this, as do the young males. He's just getting into his prime, and you can see his horns are twice the length, and his intentions were certainly different. He went straight up to the rear of that lady and gave it a quick sniff just to make sure that she wasn't giving a possible invitation for mating, which would be unlikely at this time of the year. And it looks like he too is going to quench his thirst in the perfect spot for us. But we've already seen Kudu drinking this afternoon, and you haven't seen the hyena den, which is active. Off you go.
Right, so here we are at the hyena den on Mvubu Road. There is Corky. I've now got to try and refigure out what's going on here. So there are D1 and D2. And I was trying to find out if D1 still has a little white patch. She does. There we go. Okay, so that's D1, T2 in front that you can see now. And D1 is just staying behind. And as far as I'm told by my colleagues, the other adult there is the matriarch, or what seems to be the matriarch. And she has not shown me her cubs yet. Let's just have a quick look. She's got plenty of notches in her ears. And so I think that's pretty much the matriarch. Yeah, she's definitely got lots of notches on her ears there. That sound is just fantastic. And a lot of interesting information actually sent through by a few viewers on hyenas. While I was away, I picked up a few emails and read about some of the hyena stuff. And one of the things that I was always, took to be truth was that if you found one hyena, or if a female was born with another female, it would be almost definite that she would kill her sibling. And apparently that isn't always the case. It does happen often, but not universally. I suspect we're just slightly too late here because they may go off and forage now. Maybe not. They're venturing a long way from the den now. Our little D1 and 2. Oh, now who's that? Looks like a female, so that must be June, I think, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while, of course. Now, come on, bring your little ones out. I want to see them. Hazel on YouTube. Well, there's a wonderful way to answer your question. You can see how they're behaving to each other now, and you want to know if they behave like dogs. No, they don't. They have unique behavior. Hyenas, Hazel, they're greeting with what we term, not to put too fine a point on it, genital licking. Sounds like a fairly beastly term, which it is. And so not really like dogs, which will greet each other. I mean, they do sniff each other's backsides, but they don't have this sort of prolonged genital investigation that goes on with hyenas. So from that point of view, they absolutely differ from dogs. And they live in a matriarchal society, unlike dogs, which tend to have an alpha pair that is led by the alpha male. Males have no social standing here, so their behavior is very unlike that of dogs, even though there is a vague resemblance, and they're not even closely related to dogs. Thank you, Hazel, for that. Yeah, you can see precisely what I was talking about there. That sort of very pronounced investigation of the genital area. Now, you can see that that is a female, everybody, because the tip of the pseudo-penis there is not, in fact, it's not pinched, it's dead straight. And that, unless I'm very much mistaken, is a female, and therefore is June. And for those of you who don't know, we've tried to sort of name them after the months in which they were born, just to try and make things a bit easier when we were referring to them. Of course, as they become adults, they're going to become more and more difficult to identify from each other, and we're going to have to start trying to find obvious spot patterns. Which you can do if you take photographs. You can definitely do that. Their spots don't change. They will obviously get slightly further spread apart as they get bigger, but the actual positioning of the spots, rather like the fable of the leopard goes, the hyena does not change its spots. Not so, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, I mean, Corky, for example, is quite easy to identify. She's got a few scars on her. I think the most obvious ones are on the top of her head. Here she goes past us now on the right-hand side. That's her there. She's got one on her hip as well. Oh, that's a lovely shot of her going off into the setting sun. She's also got 3 kind of scars on the top of her head. And here goes Mrs. Matriarch after her with her pot belly. Life's been good to the royalty of this clan. And interestingly, as we watch them disappear off, she most obviously noted by the nicks in her ears, which won't heal, I don't think. Interestingly, they've kind of left June here with these 2 youngsters, almost like a nursemaid, and she's now 7 months old, so, or 8 months old. 8. No. So I'm interested that they haven't gone back into the den. Oh, hang on. There is another adult I can see through the back. Can you see there? There we go. Here's some more stuff going on here. So Steph in Switzerland, a very good thought, because we don't see June's mum ever, and she's the one who has the scar across her back, if I'm not mistaken. And we don't ever see her here, and Steph, you're saying maybe she's particularly low ranking and therefore doesn't make it. That must be pretty, is it? Yes. Pretty in November, maybe? There we go. I think that's pretty in November there. That's wonderful stuff. So, Steph, you were saying possibly June is suckled away from the den. That is precisely what happens with a low-ranking hyena. Yeah, will often suckle away from the den, or suckle at night and then go away again. But not too far from the den. Hi. That's not very kind, is it? I'm trying to stay out of the way. Now, I got a new telephone while I was on leave. Of course, it's got nothing to do with being a telephone, but it has super slow-mo, And so I'm playing with it consistently. I don't think it's going to pick up these magnificent hyenas there in these low light conditions. But when they get this close, here comes another little one. I think it's very interesting that June has been left here as a nursemaid. Now the others, of course, is, I think November is, oh, there she is. She's, I can just see her over the door here, but we won't be able to pick her up with the camera. She's right here. There we go. Oh, they are just too precious. And look, Brian, I don't know if you can get in on the underside of that foot there. I'm pretty sure that's D1, and you just made, so yeah, it is. You could see that the pads are pink. So it's almost like a little piece of albinism on D1 there, where you've got pink pads and those white toes. So no melanin in those two toes. What a wonderful way to end our drive. Now, let's just try and figure out here. Of course, the cubs will start to show dominance from this age. And I think it's not surprising. I think there's a little bit of confusion over the dominance of Pretty versus Corky in light of the fact that around this den, I'm told, that Pretty is really quite a lot more assertive than she was when she was just with Corky at the other den site. And so if we watch the cubs together, it'll be interesting to see if Corky's kids, the two littler ones here, are sort of cheeky around the slightly larger one that is November. And I think this one here, June, yeah, I initially thought that June's mother was quite dominant, but perhaps I'm wrong. And certainly they're not afraid to be cheeky to her at all. It's a very interesting observation. Fascinating comment from Deborah. Deborah, you say Madam, the matriarch, I think that's a good name for her, is gentle with all of the cubs. Unlike when Corky was at the other den, she tended to be quite snappy with the cubs that weren't her own. And you say maybe that's part of being a matriarch, that, you know, tolerance to youngsters and others of lower rank. And you then say maybe you're projecting a little bit. I think you are projecting a bit, I'm afraid. But it is fascinating to see. She's obviously got the social smarts, though, to be the matriarch and to maintain that position. And of course, if you're a primate, a Circopithian primate, that's precisely how you do it. It's not just plain, it's mostly aggression, but it also is sussing out the social lay of the land. So that's a great thought and a great observation. All right. Well, everybody, I think that's the end of our drive for today. Thank you very much, all of you, for your well wishes and for your comments and questions. Lovely to talk to you all again, and I'm most pleased to be back here in the bush, enjoying and observing the changes of the drought as they carry on. A big thanks to Scott and Andrew. You will see them tomorrow, along with Bryan and I. Thank you, Bryan, for a magnificent effort today. And, of course, to Nicola in the final control in my ear, and receiving the questions from you, Kirsty McLennan-Smith. From all of us here, a good night to you. It's a beautiful evening, and I'm going to enjoy it further for a little bit longer here. We will see you in the morning in the brightness of the African dawn. Remember, we're half an hour later tomorrow, so we'll be starting at 05:30 tomorrow morning, not 0500. See you then. Bye-bye.